Hello everyone, I'm Mike from the Self App, and thank you for listening to the Self App podcast. This is a show where we discuss all things good thoughts, good words, good deeds related, and interview people passionate about being their best self and who are helping others to be their best self too. Some of the segments include Coaching Clinic, where we talk to psychologists, motivational thinkers, and life coaches. Book Club, where we discuss and share reviews on our favourite books. Startup Spotlight, taking a pre-seed and more often than not non-techie view on starting a business and running a business. Health and Fitness Hustle, where we provide tips, tricks and training from experts. And Esoteric Edge, a look at hidden or secret philosophy and how it can help you be your best self. If you haven't already, please download the Self App, where we deliver you a collection of tools to help you be your best self, and 3% of all our profits are donated to charity. Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in. Today it's my privilege to introduce you to Richie Cranny. Richie was born in West London in 1971, married in the year 2000 and still married to date. He has 3 kids, 8, 10 and 12, and respectively a girl, boy and a boy. Richie started in martial arts in 1990 and is a black belt in Choi karate, which he attained in 1996. He opened his first school in Thames Ditton, just outside London, in 1996. Richie started training as a mixed martial artist from 1997. His formal style, Pro Mai MMA, was created in 2020 by his coach, Lee Aylett. Richie's professional record is 4-1-1 amateur and 0-1 in his pro MMA career. Richie moved to Australia in 2003 and he coached MMA in the PCYC in Redfern in Sydney. He injured his back in 2005, started back coaching in 2007, opened his own MMA gym, Platinum Extreme, in 2009. Richie is a Men's Fitness magazine MMA editor from 2011 to 2018. He is the founder and creator of the Wimp to Warrior program from 2012. He was awarded his 4th degree black belt in Pro Mai in 2018 in London. He's an IMMAF coach level 1 from 2019, an IMMAF level 2 coach and course instructor from 2020. He's voted as the president of the IMMAF Australia in 2019, pioneered MMA specialist coaching courses for IMMAF in 2019, the winner of Contribution to Coaching Award 2019, World MMA Awards, awarded the first IMMAF black belt in Australia in 2020, voted as the chairman of IMMAF World Coaching Commission in 2020, the founder of Specialist MMA in 2021. So Richie, quite a mouthful, very difficult for me to get a coverage of all of that, and a fantastic accolade for you. I'm truly thrilled to have you on the show here today, and I would love for you to tell us about your program, Wimp to Warrior. So talk to us all about the MMA program, Wimp to Warrior.
Hey Mike. So Wimp to Warrior, it came from my whole journey in martial arts. So the reason I got involved in martial arts, which I'll talk to you about in a minute, but I got involved with MMA very early in the piece. And when there were no rules, it was bare knuckle at the beginning. Everyone was trying to figure out the best way to find the best fighter. And we got quite far in the UK. We were a little bit behind the US in terms of the evolution there, but we were doing well. There was established schools, we had established syllabus, we had a established system. And then when I moved to Australia in 2003, it was kind of going back in time again. It was at least sort of 2 or 3 years behind the UK and then behind the US in terms of acceptance and and the kind of training that was available. It was still very much, you train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you train Muay Thai, and then you kind of try and stick it together, a little bit of wrestling. And so I was very passionate about continuing the journey. So I started coaching very early, as soon as I basically landed in Sydney. And then through that process, I realised that there was a real problem with the media in Australia with MMA at that time. And fast forward a few years when I was opening my first gym, Platinum Extreme in McMahon's Point. I opened the gym because I wanted to try and prove to get more people into the sport that weren't necessarily, young 20-year-olds that wanted to be the next, DSP at the time, and that's pretty much everyone, as you know, we used to train together and we're all young bucks, we were just wanting just to spar and have a good time. But for the industry to grow, you need to bring the larger demographic. You need everyone. You need mums, dads, kids, and MMA just wasn't attracting those people. And when I opened my gym, Platinum Extreme, that was really magnified for me because I'd opened this amazing gym, spent a ton of money, got investors, and it was the first kind of premium MMA gym in Australia. And the idea being that it basically smashes all the images of MMA gyms at the time where it's all crusty and you just go in and you get beaten up and you go home. And so it was a premium facility. We had a weights room, we had a striking room, a wrestling room, showers, beautiful changing rooms so people could hang their suits, train in the morning and go. And so white collar workers in North Sydney. So it ticked all these boxes and I thought, this is it. This is going to bring the people in. Spent some money on PR, got in newspapers. We got a lot of press about this premium gym. Fairtex came on as a sponsor, and I thought all these little things kept happening. I thought this is going to be the thing I'm going to turn up tomorrow morning. There's going to be people queuing at my door. I've got the best gym in Australia. I've brought coaches in from around the world. I had a great guy from the US, a wrestling coach. I brought one of my striking coaches from the UK. I'd done everything I could, but still nothing. So this went on for a couple of years, and and the pressure of trying to pay huge bills like for the facility itself, rent, and then your staff, and it's just never just missing that break even, and it was very stressful. So I looked at so many different things, why wasn't this working, and it's I couldn't figure out the magic to bring these people into the gym. We tried literally everything. We used to run around the streets in North Sydney giving out flyers. We had hot chicks down at the shopping centre giving out flyers, everything, But anyway, so I'd had an back injury, as you mentioned before, so I'd always having treatment, and I was having some back treatment, and I was at acupuncture, and I just had this epiphany that I knew I couldn't fight anymore. I used to fight because I used to love it, but my back injury stopped me, and I thought, maybe if someone experiences the whole journey, not just a class, and I can show someone that it's not just about training and enjoying a class, but what you can get from going through a journey of a fighter and then experiencing that one-on-one connection with someone in combat. If I could show that and show that anyone can do it, find some guy from IT that's, you wouldn't, 50 kilos and would say boo to a goose, and he could do it, then hopefully that would be the ultimate statement that MMA is for everyone. So rushed back to the gym, wrote it all down, started mapping out a program. I thought, 6 months, I could do it in 6 months. Spoke to my strength coach about it. I said, would you help me, because we're going to have to build this person up. I had this image of him coming in as a stick man, and I'd have to bulk him up. And she was like, fantastic idea. And the name literally just came to me. I said, we just get a wimpy guy, and we're call it Wimp to Warrior. And she was like, fantastic. So I wrote it down. Literally there and then, I made the Facebook page, got the name, put an email together, put a Facebook post out. She shared it as well, and we had over 400 people contact us by email in 1 week. So I sat there and said, wow, I'm not going to train one person, I'm going to train like 50 people. So kind of come up with the concept of a tryout. Thought, because we've got too many people, so I'm just going to try and eliminate people. So invited, I've got all the applications, looked through them, and I tried to get as diverse a group as I could. So looked for mums, looked for really overweight people, looked for people that had suffered mental illness, and invited 50 people down. We put them through a weekend of tryouts, and then we picked literally 25. And it wasn't 25 of the people that survived and did well. We looked for the people that struggled the most, and we thought that we could really make a statement with them. We didn't want an athlete. You know, we had an athlete, but he was very much not an athlete at the time. He was an ex-athlete at the time, an ex-rugby player. But the rest were, some of them didn't even know what MMA was. They'd not even seen a UFC fight. They were like, we're not really sure what this is, but we heard free training. You know, so I was like, okay, whatever gets you through the door. So I trained them all for free, you know, and it took 5.5 months, and then through that program I was kind of mapping out how the program would go and listed it all, and then at the end the transformation of the people was fantastic physically, but as a coach the ultimate test is how does someone put everything together when the pressure's on, you know, in a live situation. And you don't know until it actually happens whether the magic has worked. As a coach, you don't know if you've done the right job until you see them in that cage, under pressure, the lights are on. And because I know you've trained for years as well, and you get these guys that are amazing on the mats and they can tool everyone, but you put them under the big lights, they fall apart. They're not mentally strong enough. And that's the biggest part of combat sports, is the mental side. So I was very anxious at the time because I had a lot of people push back on what I was trying to do, especially fighters in Australia, young fighters. You know, they were saying that this is wrong. It's, you know, I trained 4 years to get my first fight. You know, you're degrading what we do. Because at the time, you know, there was a couple of white collar boxing things had started, and people were kind of thinking it was like that. And, you know, I said, look, just wait. Just the proof will be in the pudding. And I invited local media down and stuff, and put on a great event at North Sydney and sold it out, 550 people there. And I was just so nervous because I didn't know it was going to work until the fight started happening. And I remember the first two guys coming out, and one of the guys, Jimmy, he's still very good friends with now. He was in the first fight. And I just said to him, just please. Before we went in the cage, just go. And his guy Adam, he fought, and they just had a barn burner. You know, they're not the most technical fights. There's only so much you can do, but the most impressive thing is that these guys, and Jimmy will tell you, I mean, he threw up before the tryouts even started. He was so nervous, and he was the stick guy, you know. And he's such a great guy, but he sends me messages all the time now. It's just calls me his big brother, and how much it's changed his life, and that's 9 years ago. So this isn't something that you stop and then it kind of unravels and you think about it, but it had no influence on you. This stuff influences people for the rest of their life, and I'm in touch with everyone from that very first series. So that's how it started, and it was a complete success. Everyone came out and they stood toe to toe and showed no fear and absolutely had a great time, and the audience thought it was fantastic. And from there it kind of built, and I opened an academy in Brookvale, and I basically set it up for the series, and it was an amazing gym, another gym, and it was set perfectly. I had the full-size cage in the center, I had the blue mats, the red mats, strength conditioning, and you know, we filmed a series, and it went on to Fox Sports 1 in Australia. And so that got a lot of momentum as well, and then people started contacting me about running the program, and the first person I wanted to give the program to, because I knew not from a monetary side, but from a fact that as a coach, it's a bit weird. As a coach, it's kind of a bit of a selfish role. It's selfless in the fact that you care nothing about everything goes into the people that are standing in front of you in the mats, everything. But what you get back is addictive, you know. That's what drives you. You want them to do well, so it makes you feel good. And this was the ultimate feel good. You know, you had this group of people that came from like nowhere, really some real mental problems, physical problems, and then there were just these primates. You know, they were just in there and fighting. They just came out and they were like alive. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best coaching job ever. So I rang Lee up in London. I said, you have to run this program. You have to run this program. So he was the first one I gave it to. And he had a massive series in London. And then we did it a couple of gyms in Melbourne and Brisbane, and then one of my guys that was on a series in Sydney was from Cork in Ireland, and then everyone started hearing about it, and he went home and he was training at SBG in Cork and was telling everyone about it there, and then the coach rang me up, said I'd love to run the program, but he said, you know, I'm part of John Kavanagh's SBG, I'd need to run it past him. I said, of course. And like John Kavanagh, like Connor was just coming up at that time, and like from a coach, like he's a massive mentor. And so I thought, wow, John Kavanagh, just having that name mentioned towards my series. Next thing, like 2 days later, I'm on a Zoom call with John Kavanagh, and he's saying, like, I want to run the program first. I'm like, holy shit, wow. This is happening. And John he said, I've heard about your program for a while. He said his mum actually told him about it. His mum had watched my original YouTube series, which was my first series like 3 years before, and told him about it and said, this guy's, you know, trying to change the sport like you are, John, but he's doing grassroots. And John was like, oh, you know, he kind of related it to white collar stuff. He says, yeah, I'm not doing that. You know, that's like everyone else until they find out what we actually do and how much is involved in the program. So then, yeah, I had a conversation with John. I flew over to Dublin. I ran his first tryouts. He had a massive series, and it kind of spiraled from there. And then, you know, and then TriStar and, you know, American Top Team, and all the gyms that I'd, as an athlete and as a coach coming up through the ranks, and you know, I used to dream about going to TriStar because GSP was my favourite fighter, and I thought I'd have to go to. Until if someone had said to me that one day your training program will be in TriStar, I'd be like, shut the fuck up. Yes, that would be. It wouldn't happen, but you know. And then 2 years later, I'm flying to Montreal, and I walk through TriStar doors, and my banner is right across the entrance point. I'm like, wow. This is insane, you know. And there's so like Ray Longo's gym, you know, in New York, the same thing. Chris Weidman. There's Chris Weidman, and there's Wimp Warrior banner above his cage. I'm like, this is nuts. So yeah, look, it's an amazing program, and the thing that gets, and I think that the thing that gets everyone so passionate about it is what it does for the people that do the program. The coaches get completely addicted to it because, like I say, it's the biggest. What word can I describe to give it what its true value is? It's so hard to describe, but in any industry, if you can think about someone that's a writer to get Pulitzer Prize or whatever, the biggest it's that feeling of accomplishment when you see a group of people in such a short space of time transform it and then call you up a week later or 2 weeks later, a month later, a year later, telling you my life has completely changed, my kids are healthier, my partners, you know, people that have been through PIS. We have a lot of people that come back from armed services, especially in the US, that have done the program, that have had amazing transformations mentally, getting back into that kind of tribe, you know, things that they missed from the army, finding the martial art way of life and going through that program with someone. And I mean, I'm sure we'll touch, but there's so many amazing stories. And I mean, I'm a bit of a sook now. Since I had kids, it softens you so much, as you know. Yeah. And nothing ever used to really bother me, but every now and then I just, the other day I got a message and I was laying in bed, my wife's in the office, and she heard me like trying to do a voicemail back, and my voice was going, and she's like, what? And this guy contacted me from Cork, who he sent me this video saying, look, I'm going to do the program. I'm the first amputee, and he sent me a picture. He lost his leg through cancer, and I was like, oh wow, that's amazing. And then he sends me this video of him getting a tattoo, and then he'd lost his wife a year before from cancer. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm sitting there, and he says, you know, this is giving me focus. And I'm like, oh, and there's all these things, and this is kind of giving this guy focus and help before the program's even started. You know, they're seeing this thing as something to drive and really drive for. And there's a guy that I've had contacted me in hospital through chemo, you know, and he sent me a picture of him, like no hair, linked up, MMA fan, and his friend had done Wimp to where he said, I'm going to survive chemo and do this because your program.
Wow.
And I went over, he was from Ireland, I went over and met him, and he'd done the program, and he invited me to his wedding. He's completely past the cancer now. There's all these things. And this is, going back, this is why I think it's so successful. It's not just, the reason I started was to try and promote MMA and give it an image that's not athletes trash talking and fighting in a cage. It's so much more, but it's so much more than that now. It's MMA is my life, and it always has been. But the program is bigger than the sport. It's more important. It's not bigger than the sport. I shouldn't say that, but it surpasses it in terms of its importance to me and people that run the program, and that's why it's grown so big and so loved by so many people, I think. And it's fantastic. So we're in we're about to be in 9 countries now. We've got 2 more countries coming on board. And our growth has only been kind of held back by our ability to grow. It's very hard to get funding for an MMA training program. It's not tech. People don't get excited about it unless you're in MMA, and if you're an MMA fan, you're probably not in that world anyway. So, my business partner Nick Langton has done an amazing job, and he's raised a lot of money recently, and we're at that point now of scale. And as big as we are now, it's in 2 or 3 years' time. We're just under 100 gyms globally now. Wow. And that's taken 9 years. We'll probably double that in the next 12 months. So we're about to scale very big. So, but it's taken a long time and very stressful. And I've, been through the ringer as startups do. Lost my car, had to move house a couple of times. Slept at the gym like throughout the week. It's just that sacrifice you go through. But I wouldn't change a thing. I really wouldn't. And it's an amazing program, and I'm very proud of it. And it's something that I'll always be able, no matter what happens in life, I'll always be able to look back and go, I created that program, and I want my kids to be able to be proud of that as well. So that's a huge part of my drive. And from a dad's point of view, is you want to give your kids something that a legacy, even if they don't get involved, but they can always look at something and use you as an example to do better. So sorry, that was really long-winded.
Mate, no, it wasn't. It was an absolutely fantastic story, and without any prompting, you've covered so many of the things that I think our audience would be curious about. And there's so many things I want to unpack. And one of the first things I want to jump into is, for someone who hasn't seen your program, or someone, and I would encourage everyone who picks this up, have a look at Wimp to Warrior. It is, Rich was searching for a word before, and I think the word that I would describe this is radically, or 2 words, radically transformational. I've never seen such truly average Jane and Joes go to the lengths of truly being warriors, and the way they stand, as you said, in the light. It's tough. It's the mental ask of you when you're standing there, you freeze, and to trade punches under lights in front of an audience of 500, 1,000 is incredibly difficult. It adds an extra level of strain and fatigue on you and your fighters, because that's what they are at the end of the program. They do that. Let's take a quick step back into the program itself, because you touched on something that's really interesting. You had some detractors. You had these fighters, and this is, your traditional guys that have grown up in boxing gyms and have had to go through their gradings and earn their stripes, and their coaches have deliberately held them back and said, look, you need to be in the ring for 4 years before we put you through there. What separates your program from, say, a white collar boxer? Give us a little understanding of what it is in the life of a week of what someone who says, I want to go in and represent my company in a white collar boxing match, versus what you put your fighters through. Because I think this is where people will understand. It is a pretty brutal program that you ask of people who are still holding down jobs and who are still having to maintain their lifestyles while they go through this program with you. So let's talk about that a little bit. So
it starts with something that has nothing to do with martial arts, and and it's the discipline and commitment of 5 days a week to start with, and it's getting your ass out of bed. I have people that travel an hour and a half each way to do the program, depending where they live to the program. And the program, most gyms start 5 a.m. or 5:30. And the reason we do that is because if you want, you have to have 5 days a week for one. Otherwise, the program would last a year. To get what you have to do, a lot of white collar boxing is sort of 3 days a week, evenings and stuff like that. And because if you look at the amount of technique you have to teach for a boxing match, white collar boxing, you know, slip, cover, jab, cross, baby foot, body shot, and then footwork, you know, and people that are watching this are going to probably, what the fuck's he talking about? You know, there's much more, but we're talking about fundamentals. You know, when I talk about what we teach in terms of our groundwork, it's very much the same. You're not going to teach technical stuff, really intricate movements, because they're never going to use it in their first 3 or 4. You've got to build. Your foundation is everything first. So if you look at the skills and the techniques that they have to learn compared to MMA, I mean, that's one of sort of 4 or 5 elements that you have to learn in MMA. And then you've got the conditioning side as well. So it's 5 days a week, it's early mornings. So everyone says it is the part of the big transformation, that mental toughening is just swinging your legs out of bed every single morning. And people say to me all the time, just do it in the evenings. People won't turn up because work, life, commitments, you know, I had to work back, my kids are sick. There's no excuse. You just get your ass out of bed every morning before your day starts. Then your day is there. So that's the first thing. It's 5 days a week. It's the program is set out it's very complex. So that it's in a 3-phase program. So the first phase is all about movement. So you're teaching the movement patterns that people do in MMA are very different from what we do normal in life. Everything we do, you know, we're doing straight lines, everything's in front of us, very little rotation that we have to do, especially under load. You know, we don't rotate and lift things up unless you're doing manual worker. All these things you have to think about when someone starts doing live drills. Their body gets into these positions that it's never done before, and they're going to be under loads. So you have to take that back, re-engineer it, and build from the base. So the first phase, the first 7 weeks, is about teaching people how to move and then strengthening those movement planes. So we have strength conditioning on a Tuesday, and then conditioning on a Friday, and then different movement patterns. So everything is just basic movement or technique with no movement. So teach movement one day and then static technique. So punches, kicks, just without any movement. And then you add the second phase is technique within movement. So then you're starting moving around, we start introducing very light live drills at that point, very light contact. And then around week 10, the strength conditioning program finishes. So basically that's what I call the bulletproof phase. So we're going to make these people as bulletproof as we can in the first 10 weeks. So they're strong and their core is really strong and their back and their neck is strong, and physically they've been through lots and lots of sports specific motions to strengthen all these planes of movement up. So you're protecting them from injury basically. And they feel fantastic and their posture changes and they walk different. And then we start the live drilling, and then that's halfway through the second phase. And then you have ground days, striking days, clinch and wrestling days. And then in the last phase, they all kind of merge into MMA. So then we put all the pieces of puzzle together. And then we have 4 weeks of sparring in the last phase. And then we fade the training down, and then we go back to specific technical aspects. So the idea of sparring in what we do is basically just pressure testing what we've learned so far, what works under pressure, what doesn't. And then everyone's different. Some techniques will work for someone, especially with the ground stuff, and not the other. So then we basically we massage what they've done, what pressure tested, what didn't. And then the last few weeks is just game planning, working out, giving them their own sort of toolbox. This is what works for you. This is what you should do. And then we do, and then the last week we switch their training over to evening to change their body clock because they compete at night. So they do evening training for the last week, and then weigh-in. And we have recovery days in there as well in the last phase. We do visualization drills. We do walkouts. We talk about trigger points for their walkout music. We talk them through about having their hands wrapped. There's lots of trigger moments where your adrenaline kicks in when you're sitting out the back. You know, it's you'll be in a room and everyone's relaxed, for instance. You know, the first trigger point of adrenaline will be when you're asked to go and sit and have your hands wrapped. Then it's suddenly you're not in a group of people that you've hanging. Now you're having your hands wrapped. It's like your adrenaline. So we talk about and we get them to visualize all these trigger points to try and get their body to go through just the same as you do with training. You know, you want them to be conditioned to those reactions of the body so they can control it, you know, and you can never control it too much, but this is a part of competition that people don't put enough time into. A lot of people talk about it now, but visualization stuff I've been doing since day one with these guys, and it makes such a difference. And so we go through all the trigger points, we do walkouts, you know, get them to stand there, you ready, touch gloves, and so they feel all these things and go through it. And then the last week I get them to go through that in their head at least twice a day, and then listen to their walkout music at that precise point when they're visualizing standing at the doors before they go through, you know. And I tell them that they can't listen to their walkout music unless they're at that point, because it has a purpose. You know, you can't listen to it driving home feeling happy. That's going to prepare you. That's your last trigger point to turn fight or flight. There you go, fight, and you're on. And it's so the program it's complex, and it's very involved, and it's you know, I've been coaching MMA since the mid-90s, and it's not just 9 years of this program and tweaking and stuff, but it's also all the years before, all the things that I did wrong and I learned from competing and coaching, and it's basically my life work in this program. And yeah, it's as far from a white collar boxing experience as you could, you know, and the pressure of an MMA fight as well. It's a whole new level of uncomfortable. You know, it's most people would stand and put head guard on and put big gloves on, pillows, and you know, and hit someone. But in MMA, there's so many things that people freak out about. You know, especially women being grabbed, held, pinned on the floor. You know, positions where their anxiety just kicks in massively. So all these hurdles you have to overcome, and we've had a couple of times women that have been had real histories of sexual abuse, you know, and I don't want to add too much, but a couple of times the first few weeks they couldn't even be touched, you know, that even another woman touching them would just freak them out because of experiences they've had before. And by the end of the program, they're rolling with guys and sparring, and then they're getting in and fighting. It is very involved, and but it's I don't want to call it a masterpiece, but it is a kind of a masterpiece of a program. It's fantastic. I love it. And look, it's not complicated. It really isn't. It's just the what you teach isn't complicated. It's the way you teach it. It's the way you coach it. The way you put it together is the most important thing. We have a coach's charter. It's a document that basically breaks down the program over 3 phases for the coaches. So the programs run the same pretty much everywhere around the world. Coaches will teach technique different no matter where they are. The actual program itself, and there's a lot in there in that program, in that manual, that covers the mental side of the training program. You know, simple things of talking about things 2 weeks before they happen. Prepare them mentally. Talk about sparring in the first phase. Talk about your own experience as a coach. The first time I ever sparred, I freaked out. Just becomes normal, you know. So putting 10 minutes aside after training 2 or 3 times a week to discuss things let people talk about their own anxieties, bond as a group, all these things that are really important for the program to be successful. So yeah, another short answer, I apologise.
That's a fantastic. Well, what I want to do, because there's so much we could unpick here, and really what we've covered today, it's not just a martial arts program story, it's a startup story, right? And I think one of the passions I have is demystifying this, that tech is the only area where you get to qualify as a startup. There are ordinary people doing extraordinary things all over the place, and they have to go through many of the same challenges, frustrations, sacrifices, and finding support and consensus, and looking for sponsorships and looking for ways to bring these things together just to support an idea. And I think you've really shared so much of that today. What I really want to do for our audience is fire off a couple of questions to kind of distill all of the richness of both the startup story and the program story that you've got today into a synthesis. If we were to distill that down into one core problem that you wanted to solve, what was the core problem that was the inspiration for Wimp to Warrior and for this program that is now spanning 9 countries?
Get more people into the sport. Basically, get people through the door of amazing gyms around the world. That was mine being the first one. And to help understand why people should get in the door, why are you passionate about it? What is it that they can get from getting in the door in an MMA gym that you've got out of it, and so many of your warriors now have gotten out of it? Well, the biggest surprise that people have when they actually walk through the door of a gym is one, is how friendly it is. There's a culture. MMA, when you compete in MMA, yes, you're on your own, but you need a team of people around you to get you to that point. And the bond that people have is, and I'm not just saying MMA, it's martial arts generally, but MMA I think it's heightened because of what the sport is. You're surrounded by really good people, right? You hear it all the time. People are shocked at how nice people are in the sport of MMA. There's very few, 30 years I've been in it, I could talk about 1 or 2 people that have had like real egos that I've met, and they don't last. They kind of get weeded out, and you get this fantastic group of people that are there to on a journey of their own, but for them to get on their journey, they need you and you need them, and you train together, and it's an amazing thing. And for me, martial arts, it gave me so much purpose. I left school with 0 education. I had dyslexia and ADD, undiagnosed back in the 80s. I was just put in the dumb class, and I just didn't turn up to school because I couldn't remember anything that was being told. And no one looked into it, and so I left school, and I was basically told that you're not going to accomplish anything in life. Friends of mine were in prison at the time. There was this horrible place to live. And I really believed that was it. I was going to sweep floors in a warehouse, which is what I was doing, and bits and pieces, and drive around my cars and get into trouble. And a friend of mine forced me to go to her brother's martial arts academy that had just opened, and it took months. I didn't want to do it. I'm doing that. But I went, and the first time I was there, I just felt that there was purpose. I had a community of people that I could talk to and be with, and it's all the things that were missing in my life. Going through school as a young adult, structure, support, health, and purpose. There was a system. I'm going to work towards something, and that's what people. Look, if you want to go to a gym and stand on a treadmill and pay $30 or whatever, that's fine. But there's so much more you can get from exercise in martial arts. There's so many things that you can get from it, and that's what I want people to understand. And so I want to get as many people to experience that as possible, because I know what it's done for me personally.
So let's just drill down into that a little bit more. How do you're running a business and you're running your life's passion, and let's face it, as you said, one of the biggest challenges you've had is funding this. How do you maintain your drive in the face of the financial challenges and the fear that you said you've had to sell your car, you've had to move houses several times. That's a lot of change and a lot of frustration for you and for your family. Tell us, how do you maintain drive in the face of what is absolutely natural fear?
I don't want to keep going back to the same thing, but it is the same answer for me. It's what you learn as a martial artist. In martial arts, you can't get better without failing, and that's a cliche in life. Everyone keeps saying, you got to fail, you pick yourself up, but you actually live that in martial arts, because you start as a white belt. Everyone in the class is better than you, everyone, and you're the lowest, you're the pond. You're sitting there and these guys and you get your ass whooped, and you keep coming back. You keep coming back, and then you get a little bit better, and then you get to the top of your pile, your white belt, and then you're beating the guys that come in and they're going through the same thing, adversity, and then you get upgraded, and then you're in the new belt or you're in the next level of class. You come through, and then you're getting your ass kicked again because you've got all these people that have been there 2 years before, and it's this system of failure and if by breaking you down, you're going to get stronger. And I have something I always quote, believe, achieve. And John Kavanagh, he's become a really good friend of mine, and we talk a lot, and he always laughs because I use it all the time, believe, achieve. But he says, yeah, but what people don't understand, between believe and achieve is a whole lot of hurting. And it's true, but you don't want to write that in a long hashtag, but it's... That's right. I think being passionate about what you do and truly believing in it, and then understanding that failure is just a path to success. You're only going to get stronger. It's the same as weight training. You go in, you tear, you break the muscle down, it comes back, it repairs, comes stronger. And it's the same with your mind. And the more times you go through that kind of adversity, the stronger your mind gets, and you just Absolutely. See it as a pathway. And that's what martial arts really teaches. And before we started press record, we were talking about kids and being wrapped up in cotton wool, and that's what kids everything is just given to them now. They don't even have to look, MacBook, a question, Google, they don't even have to type it in, they just speak to this thing, and everything's on a plate, and they go to their sports carnival, everyone gets a medal, no one's a loser. We're setting these kids up for failure in life, because anything that becomes tough, they're going to crumble, because they don't know how to deal with it. So even sports, there's so many sports out there, they've taken away all the beautiful things that you teach kids through sport. But martial arts, you can't do that, because martial arts, you can't get better without failing. So it's that's why I think so many kids, it's so important to have something like a martial art or something that teaches you failure is progression.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
couldn't agree more, Rich, and absolutely well spoken. I think you've summed that up beautifully. So we're wrapping up our chat today. I want to know, and I want our audience to know, who and what are you thankful for in your life as you're going through? It sounds like you're on the verge of a breakthrough point for this absolutely exploding. You've worked your absolute backside off. You've persevered. You've faced failure after failure after failure, and come back and stood up and continue to fight. Who and what are you thankful for in your life, Rich?
My wife, first and foremost, because doing a startup, and I've done a few. Unless you have someone there that's going to support you, you can't do it on your own. We have a family. My wife has paid the mortgage since forever, since we've been in Australia. Yes, I get an income and I put as much as I can, but when you're in a startup, everything you take out, it slows the startup, the business. You've got to put everything into it, and the emotional support as well. So my wife has been a huge part of what I do. And then, surround yourself with good people is the key. It's you got to take away, if you have negative people around you, it's going to make things so much harder for you. You have to have positive people, but people that can do things that you can't. So you can concentrate on what you're good at. I'm great at coaching. I'm not good at the business side of things. Nick Langton came in, and he's the one that's raised all the money. I brought him on as the CEO, and he's enabled me to, he brings the money in and looks after that side and lets me do what I do. And I think that's the key, you know, find what you're good at. And without these people, I mean, I'd still be running Wimp to Warrior, but it wouldn't be where it is now. So, yeah, I think, and as cliche as it sounds, my kids, because they're my biggest motivator, is coming from where I did, you know, being told that I'd never achieve anything and leaving school with no education. You know, I want to give them something to be proud of and you know, and drive and you know, if my dad can do this, then so can I. So they're my biggest motivators.
I love it. So Rich, one key piece of insight as we wrap up our conversation today, if you could distill into a hashtag, or if you could distill it into something, what is one key piece of insight or advice that you could offer our listeners that can help them be their best self?
Dream big, for starters. You know, don't listen to other people. If you have a vision, you do it, go for it. So I always dream big, and then, like I said before, believe, achieve. You know, write it down. I'm a big thing in vision boards. You know, some people like them, some don't. But I need to see what I'm working towards, even if it's a whiteboard. But put your vision down, write goals, and just cut out anyone that's negative in your life, because you can't do what you're about to do if you have these people, because there'll be times where you can be broken by someone that's telling you, walk away, don't do it, you know, because you're going to have times when you're very low and you need people around you that are going to pick you up. So dream big, believe in yourself, be passionate, and just go for it.
Love it. Well, Richie, thank you so much for coming on the Self Out podcast. If people want to find out more, where can they pick up? Is there a website? Is there somewhere that they can visit to find Wimp to Warrior?
For sure. So wimptowarrior.com is our website. Nice and easy, and then it's Wimp, the number 2 Warrior, or 1, and that's on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Fantastic. Well, to our audience, thank you for listening today. Before you go, I ask that you do us a good deed and share this with just one other person. Please leave us a 5-star review wherever you tuned into the podcast. For more best self goodness, find us on social by searching for The Self Out. From us to you, keep up the good thoughts, good words, good deeds, and continue to level up your best self. Thank you.